When you think of ways to improve your health and well being, you're probably like me and think of eating better, exercising, getting outside, hydrating, maybe even taking supplements or filtering your water. But what about rest? I think because of cultural norms and values, as well as the busyness that we build into our lives, rest isn't top of mind. Or maybe you think that rest is great. It is a pathway to health, but struggle, like me, to actually slow down and make it a priority. In this episode, I chat with Erin Taylor about rest. She is a passionate advocate for the importance of rest and recovery in our busy lives. She was a college athlete that learned about rest the hard way, and now she's a mom helping others discover the benefits of rest and figure out how to practice rest in their daily routines. In this episode, we really focus in on what prioritizing this could look like for busy moms. I'm not going to lie, Erin stepped on my toes in this episode, but in a good way. And you might feel it too. But we really need to hear this encouragement. So listen in and discover how rest can become your new superpower. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Meredith. I've led my family on a transformative health journey for over a decade, and now I help other families do the same. This is a place where busy moms can learn about healthy living. I hope that what you learn here helps you feel empowered to take the next step in your family's health journey. Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Militia. Really happy to be here.
I have to say, I really wish I was on site with you in Scotland right now, recording this podcast. That would be even more lovely, but super excited to chat with you and learn why you are so passionate about rest. Would you kind of mind sharing your story with us about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I actually first took up yoga as an injured collegiate athlete. And I had a pretty serious back injury and was sidelined for a season. And it was suggested to me at that time that I try some yoga to help with just the recovery process and overall, working on my flexibility and as well as core strength. But as a teenager, I very reluctantly rolled out a mat. I was thinking it was, this was quite a while ago in San Francisco. Basketball.
Okay, I love basketball.
Yeah, so I was a basketball player and which, a world away from yoga and, kind of what I do now. But, it became my entry point to yoga because, as anyone who's sort of had any sort of injury knows, you'll do anything to solve it, to solve that problem, that imbalance, won't you? And so I started going to a couple of classes, which I thought were pretty weird at the time, again, as a teenager. And they were more like traditional types of yoga classes, which were cool, but very sort of outside of my frame of reference and mode of operation as a teenage athlete.
Right.
And, I quickly kind of, picked up on a couple things so I could see how they would be useful. And I started stretching more on my own at home and just kind of before and after practice, that kind of thing. And I really sort of instantly like connected to this aha of, oh, there is a lot that happens. There's a lot that can be done when we're not sprinting so hard at everything and taking the time to really slow down, breathe deeply, pay attention to what was happening in my body, becoming more aware of my breathing. And, that was really like the reset button for me, if you will, that kind of helped me to open my eyes to balance and, the possibility of moving in the other direction because, as most people know, we're so busy going, making, doing, that it can be much more difficult to access a slower gear. And so, taking up yoga as an athlete was my first kind of entry point to realizing that rest is equally as important, rest and recovery.
Yeah. Basketball is actually a pretty good analogy for a busy mom life. Sprinting from one thing to the next, always having to pay attention to what's around you, pivoting from one thing to another.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so how did that kind of, I guess, propel you into the next phase of your life? I mean, you're playing basketball, injury, go into yoga, and then how did this become a professional avenue for you?
Well, initially, at that time, I came to, appreciate so many aspects of yoga. And I also felt like I wished that there was a voice, an approach that would speak more directly and contextually to me as an athlete at that time. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of work in that space being done. And so over the years, I developed my own approach to really kind of connect those dots of how what we do on the mat benefits us and uplifts us, in more of a sports context. So I founded a yoga for athletes platform and app, really with the aim of making yoga very accessible to athletes and sporty types. And it's really interesting that, over the years, I've found that my work has had a much broader appeal amongst people who resonate with really a practical, straightforward approach to using yoga to solve problems, to solve the imbalances that all of us face every day in all aspects of life.
Yeah. And now you have a book, Move, Rest, Recover. Is that kind of the
I do.
culmination of what you have learned in your own life, what you've learned working with clients?
It is. So it's my third book. My first two books were more yoga for athletes specific. And my second book actually was a book of restorative practices for athletes. And um, my new book, Move, Rest, Recover, is a practical guide to really using rest as kind of like a superpower
Yeah.
that so often we forget is available to us. It is. It's very much, I feel like it's the culmination of my body of work that I've created over the last 20 years. And I've taught a lot of yoga to a lot of different kinds of people. And I can tell you just universally what I've seen the most everywhere I look. The biggest imbalance I see is the imbalance between working and resting. And so my work has been very focused on supporting people to activate rest and recovery in the moments when we really need it the most. And so this book, really kind of brings together all of that work into a practical guide and workbook.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as a busy mom, when I say like when you say rest is a superpower, I'm like, oh, that sounds very nice. That sounds very nice. Tell me more about that. So, when you say rest, like, what do you mean? Because a lot of kind of things can come to mind. Like, do you mean just taking a nap or sleeping more at night or taking a break during the day? Like, what do you mean when you say rest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, I'd say this book kind of, addresses what I feel is like the myth that rest happens automatically when we're not working, that recovery happens, as soon as you shut your laptop or when you write rest day in your calendar. I think, right? I mean, it's, okay, yeah, it'll have, you know, the reality.
On my calendar that I'm resting, right?
So it must be happening. I'm not at work. I'm not at my laptop. I'm not, whatever it is that you're doing, when you're not doing the thing, like rest doesn't happen automatically. And that is because we are so busy doing so much. We live in a world that asks us to do too much all the time, really, leaving little to no time to really kind of process or integrate anything that has happened. And, we're really good at it. We're really good at keeping up with everything, really to our own detriment because, we've become so well versed in going 0 to 60, but it doesn't automatically work in the other direction. And if you've ever sort of just, felt very this lingering tension, or you've had trouble sleeping, or you just feel like you just can't sort of wind down or like flip the switch, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And
I
that's
do. I
because,
know exactly what you're talking about.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not automatic because we don't do it enough. It's not a default. And the reality is that rest um, is a skill that has to be activated and strengthened just like you would train a muscle. And so when I talk about rest, what I'm talking about, isn't just kicking back on the sofa, although that's nice too. What I'm talking about is making a very clear, intentional um, movement from working to resting and really supporting yourself to calm and settle your nervous system,
Yeah.
as well as in with that, your mind and your body to come into balance.
I love that. I saw on your website that you quoted, I'll quote you and say you said that rest should be your top priority in 2025. Why would you say that?
It should, like I said, I feel like it's like a superpower. It's a power stance. You know, there's this collective mindset that, you know, if we are not constantly producing, um, that's not okay.
That's so true.
And that we don't value rest as just as important and equally as productive as everything else that we do. It's really that balance and that ebb and flow that we're designed for, and we actually function and perform our best when we find that natural rhythm rather than pushing ourselves into fatigue and then beyond it to the point where then I'm sick, I'm injured, I'm burned out, and wait for, a big problem, even consider addressing it.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about some of the benefits of rest then, because when you say that rest can be just as productive as work, like what do you mean by that? Because I think that's kind of maybe like new for a lot of people listening.
Absolutely. I mean, it really decreases stress and tension. It really allows you to absorb all of the gain and benefit of your hard work. It helps you to manage pain. If you're coping with any sort of chronic condition, or working on healing an injury or illness, it really helps to manage that process. Um, it increases our attentional capacity. Um, you know, it boosts the immune system. I could go on and on. There's so much science that affirms the value and the importance of rest.
Yeah.
And yet, do you feel rested? It's,
Right.
you
Yeah, we
know,
still don't make it a priority. Yeah. You mentioned the nervous system as well. Like, what is the connection between rest and the nervous system?
Yeah, so rest helps to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of your rest and digest zone. And without really making that activation, without activating your parasympathetic nervous system, we get kind of stuck in this overstimulated, engaged cycle.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't necessarily kind of come back down. It doesn't, again, move in the other direction when we're in such a heightened state over such a prolonged period of time. So rest really helps to activate the other end of the spectrum, which brings us into balance, brings us into a state of more ease.
I love that. I mean, absolutely, I'm listening, like, and honestly, like, a lot of what you have said isn't new for me. Like, I being like in the health and wellness world, I've heard a lot of these things before, but I'll admit that I'm still not making rest as much of a priority as I should. I can tell when I can almost feel it in my body, when I haven't rested well or just have put too much on myself or have been going too much and not kind of slowing down for a while. And so it's hard for a lot of reasons,
It's hard.
just having a lot of kids that are busy and wanting to be involved in their life, and also just I think my personality a little bit, wanting to I love to do lots of different things. I have lots of different interests and ideas, and I like to be active, and so it's hard to kind of balance all that. Like I can put too much on myself, like not blaming anyone else but myself. Um and so yeah, it's just kind of hard. So I'm kind of curious like what it has looked like in reality for you, like practically, what are some rhythms that you have built into your life that allow you to do this intentionally?
That's a really good question. I think that practicality is really the key
Mm.
because if your practice doesn't fit in your real life, it won't work.
Yeah.
And when it becomes something not an addition to your to do list, our very long to do list, not another
Right.
thing to try to squeeze in, gotta put in my rest today. Rather, it becomes a really integrated
Mm.
part of the flow of your day. That's really when the magic happens. It becomes something like that you wouldn't not brush your teeth. It would feel kind of yucky, right? It's
Mhm.
it's kind of like that. And so I think it's all about finding practices and gestures that support you throughout the day, every day, rather than waiting. Too often we wait until all the planets align and everything's crossed off to
Right.
be with them. Now I can relax.
Right.
It's
Never happens.
it'll if you wait till the perfect time, it won't happen, just like anything. And so, I think it's important to understand and acknowledge you don't need a lot of time,
Mm.
resource to use rest. A couple of examples, what I see as so often missed opportunities throughout the days. Transitions are one of the biggest opportunities to rest. Something is ending, something is about to begin. There is space in between those activities when we allow it for ourselves. Too often we are just rushing on to the next thing, carrying all this kind of wispiness of everything that's just happened and charging into the next. I think carving out a few moments between the activities of your day as a release valve is is an incredibly powerful practice. One thing that I do every day before I pick my kids up from school, I like make a hard stop, minimum 5 minutes, but I try to give myself more like 15 to 20 before
Mm.
wrap whatever it is. And then literally walking out the door, I'll stop and do something restorative. And some days that might mean lying down, putting my legs up the wall. Some days it might be a different restorative posture. Sometimes it might be, I just need to sit and drink this cup of tea. No devices, that just sit and drink the tea and look at the garden for 5 minutes. Anything like that that creates a space for all of your systems, for that parasympathetic nervous system to realize, ah, we're okay. We can like let go of all the props that are holding you up for a few moments. That is incredibly restorative in nature. And you really feel the difference after. I think too often we assume, oh, it doesn't matter because, oh, it's only 2 minutes. Oh, I just on the
Right.
fire. So it won't make any difference. Mm. And I would challenge you to try it, for a week. Use those little pockets and yeah, maybe you still feel a little bit tired after, but I think you'll notice, The tension is gone. I feel a little calmer. I feel a little more spacious. I feel better just
Yeah.
from taking those few moments for yourself.
Yeah, I know yoga does a lot of with breath work, does a lot with breath work, and that's actually something that's been really good for me is to learn a few breath work techniques that I can do in those few moments. Is that something that you do as well? Like, has that been beneficial for you?
Absolutely. Yep. Your breath is really your most powerful and accessible tool.
Mhm.
So I outline quite a few different breathing practices that you can use in my book. And I would say the simplest, most just kind of universally accessible way to use your breath is to simply lengthen your exhale. This immediately helps to calm your nervous system. Just lengthen your exhale. And this is something you could do anywhere. You could do it in your car while you're on your way to get the kids. So, it's your breath is always with you and you can always use it to
Yeah.
calm and center yourself.
Do you ever like look at people and think that person could use some rest? Being in this space, like, I'm sure your antenna is kind of up and you're so knowledgeable about the topic. I'm kind of wondering if you can like spot some signs and symptoms in people and be like, that person could really benefit from some rest in their life.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel attuned to that. I don't like pass judgment
Right.
because
Not in a
people,
negative
well,
way, but just the awareness way. Yeah.
people have so much going on and you know what a real tell to me is like on a Monday when you're just catching up with parents and maybe the school run or friends or colleagues and oh how was your weekend what you get up to and it's like oh oh it was exhausting we did this and this and people are so quick to like rattle off like this jam-packed schedule of the weekend, like the time off. And sometimes it's hard to tell. It's like, are you mad about that? Or are you proud of it? We wear this busyness like a badge of honor. And to me, that's kind of a tell that, maybe it's difficult to actually really give yourself a break, really stop and, unwind. People tell me all the time that they feel exhausted and yet so much difficulty to actually rest and kind of let go because it's a practice. It's like anything. The more you practice rest, the more efficiently and effectively you can use those few moments to refuel yourself.
Right. And I think I kind of already know the answer to this because of what you've already said, but can that can those rest practices look different for different people? I mean, depending on, I guess, their preference or kind of their season of life or whatnot.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that rest is an incredibly unique and personal practice. There is no universal prescription that's going to best serve everyone and their circumstances. So I think it's all about working out what really feels right to you, what really fits into the flow of your day, and using those practices. And again, as you said, different seasons of life that will change. Certain times you might find I just need more rest right now. And I think especially as women, uh, the seasons we go through, even, month to month, hormonally,
Week to week. Yeah.
really week to week and recognizing that and then responding, I think we just put way too much pressure on ourselves to like stay at this level, this high level of production all the time. And, um, the reality is there is such an ebb and flow. And, it matters not just kind of noticing that, really becoming aware of that, really checking in with yourself. How do I feel? Like I'm tired. Okay. Now what? How can I respond to that in the time that I do have day.
Yeah, I think everybody is probably unique in their capacity for, activities or time with people or, you know, busyness of schedule or whatnot. And some people are going to thrive with, more people time or more, I don't know,
Right.
fun activities with the family while other people want more downtime. So I can see how all of that uniqueness would play into how this looks for you, right? So I'm also kind of wondering in a world where of health and wellness where we're really encouraged to lift weights and exercise and take walks and all the things like what does that look like just from a physical perspective of rest? Like how often would you recommend like most moms work out or how many days of rest do we need? Like, what does that kind of rhythm look like for, a healthy balance of rest and work and exercise and all those things?
Right. Again, that's so unique and personal, and it shifts really. I mean, it's really, I think, a bigger question of balance, um, which isn't like this perfect puzzle to solve. It's not this end goal or destination. It's a practice. It's a way of being. It's, staying really attuned to how you are and responding accordingly. And obviously, it's so important to move and maintain your strength. And resting is part of that. Resting makes you stronger. Resting increases your resilience and your ability to really, I think, cope with all the unexpected that comes at us every day.
Yeah.
So I really just encourage people to try to slow down a little bit and get a little bit closer to that, really recognizing how you are. And, that as a practice, we can start to more clearly discern, what we're really needing. Do I really need to squeeze in that run? Is that going to give me energy or is that going to just push me over the edge? I have that in my mind. I was going to do that today. Is that really kind of the best way to support myself today? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have to keep in mind that rest is like one aspect of our health, right? Or it's not a standalone thing. So if you are trying to, let's say I have a goal to like hike the Grand Canyon. So I'm gonna have to train for that. Like I'm gonna have to, do specific things to make sure I'm prepared for that. But it's not, I guess I can think of like the physical work of training for that and making sure I have rest and recovery. But there's also fueling my body, right? Making sure that I'm hydrating well, different things like that. So I think there's a lot of factors that kind of we need to consider when we're thinking about a really balanced approach to like physical fitness and rest and fueling our bodies and things like that. So I don't know. That was just a random thought, but we can do a lot. Like we're we with our bodies, we can push ourselves to do things like hike the Grand Canyon or I have another friend that's trying to run a marathon in every state so she trains for that, but she can also have rest, right? It's not just like I have to push
Yes.
myself and accomplish this goal. Like you said, I love that idea of how rest can even help her reach her goal, right?
I think that's just it. Rest
Yeah.
supports you to really to perform and to achieve your goals. I mean, because if you are training for a marathon and all you do is run, 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 you know, um, that's not a very balanced approach. Obviously, you have to put in those miles and you have to put in the work to be able to handle that kind of distance, but you'll get more out of your training, more out of your workout. You spend some time with some really, focused recovery, stretching as a practice, putting your legs up the wall every day before bed. These things that actually help your body to absorb what you've done so that you can become stronger
Mhm.
as you move toward your race and your goal.
Right. And what have you seen in the people that you've worked with? I guess they probably come to you um, having experienced the negative effects of not resting well and not having this recovery time. But what have you seen like in people's lives or I mean, you shared your own kind of injury story with us, but what are the negative consequences that you've seen play out of people that haven't taken rest and recovery more seriously?
Just a broad, injury, illness, burnout type situation, when we don't value and practice rest. Um, you know, and it's been interesting to me over the years, just anecdotally, all of the benefits people have seen from actually like taking the time. It's like runners. I'm here to stretch my hamstrings, really, or whatever it is. But then these people coming back and saying to me, "Wow, I notice I sleep so much better on a day when I've done a practice like this in the evening." And I think that is really, that is, that's it. That's what it's
Yeah.
about. Or I've heard moms say they feel like they can just cope with kid stuff, have a lot more patience and presence when they've taken a little bit of time, to more consciously kind of set their state and baseline around a little bit more calm and ease. And also being able to focus better at work. When I am rested, when I've used a restorative practice, my attentional capacity just kind of expands.
Mhm.
And so rest really supports us in all contexts of life.
Yeah. I mean, that rest and digest state is huge for like our just our all around like health and well-being. Like that affects every aspect of our life. And for example, when you say burnout, that people can experience burnout if they're not taking rest seriously. I mean, we kind of associate that with a more career oriented context, but it can be, I mean, a stay-at-home mom can experience burnout, and so I just think that there's a huge mental health component to all of this, a mental health benefit if we take it seriously. I'm talking to myself right now. Militia, you need to take this seriously. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like what you said, they can be more patient and are less quick to be frustrated or whatnot with our children, right? If we're in a place where we're more rested and kind of, I don't know, mentally just calm is the kind of the word that comes to mind. So I love that mental health benefit. I think that would be huge.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also we have to have some compassion for ourselves because, I mean, again, reality of life. Maybe you were up all night with a sick kid, or,
Yeah.
you know, uh, the things that really are beyond our control that push us over the edge and make us very tired.
Mhm.
And, recognizing um, how you are, how you're feeling in those moments, and any sort of related, sort of tension or reactivity that might be arising due to that, and treating yourself with compassion, and perhaps considering, how could I reach for a little bit of rest for myself um, in this moment. It's almost like in the same way you might reach for a snack when you're hungry. Can we reach for rest when we're tired rather than a cup of coffee? Reach for something that's already there within you,
Mhm.
if you will allow yourself just that pause, to slow down and just breathe deeply, pay attention, move into balance, really.
Yeah, that's really great. Can you kind of tell us what you do in your membership? I mean, I'll link your books in the show notes for everybody that wants to learn more that way, but I know you have a little bit more support in your membership. Can you kind of tell us what that's about and what that offers?
I did, yes, I'd be happy to. So my platform is called Balance Practice, and every week I send out some writing that explores really the themes of balance and practice in the context of practicality. And so through that, I offer, different tools and insights and prompts that you can use in different aspects of your life. And then every Friday, I send out a new yoga video that is really designed to be a practical, accessible practice to solve imbalance. These sessions I kind of design with the intention of just creating a little bit of space for yourself. They range from 5 to 20 minutes. And in these sessions, my hope is that people feel like, you've done something, um, you've been reminded of something important about the way your body is designed to work, and you've also relaxed deeply. So those are kind of the three things I try to um, support people with in those videos. So those go out weekly on Balance Practice.
I love that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I'll definitely link that in the show notes as well. I mean, I love this topic. I'm so grateful you were willing to come and share your wisdom with us. It's needed. This conversation is very needed. So I love that you are, being really intentional about sharing all of your wisdom. Even as a person of faith, I'm talking to you and I'm like, wow, like, God even instructs us to put rest into our rhythm of life in different ways. And so this is just resonating with me
Yes.
definitely in a lot of different ways. And thanks for the encouragement to take it a little more seriously.
Oh, yeah, it's
Really,
my pleasure.
yeah, really.
Yeah. Yeah, pleasure. And to you and to anyone listening, I would just encourage you to, rest in your ways, your unique ways throughout the day, every day. And I hope that you'll rest and you'll feel the difference.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.